So, and then we hope that the plan would be that when all this information will go to NSRL, and they will then input it just input it into the database as it's built, and then we would like to be able to have team captains this fall come in towards the end of the fall in December, and they can go in and they can print out a report for each of their team members, and an aggregate report of who's on their team, so they can access that, and they can print it down, or they can email it to their team members. So we're trying to give that functionality to the team captains to access the data and get it back to the individual farmers on their team. Anything else in the database to add, Jim? Gary?
Well, there's so many ways that people can use this data. So one of the things we're trying to do by giving it back to you and to your captains to work with, or your sponsors to work with, is that you can start to manipulate this data and ask the questions that are important to your interests and what type of products you may want to try to use, or what type of practices you might want to try to use. We will try to also put a lot of that information together with the help of the University of Illinois, but a lot of that we can't do as quickly as you can do it yourself. You just say, I can pull this together and ask some questions or do some filtering on my Excel sheets or whatever system you like to use. So we're trying to keep these tools in your hands much more so than they were in 2010.
Very good point, Jim. Thank you. Anything to add here, Gary?
Yes, I thought it was real important this year that we have a system where we could very readily open up any individual farmer's account and just look at the data very easily of everything that's been entered so far. And sometimes I entered for several different farmers last year, and I would kind of lose track of what I've entered for each one. So with this spreadsheet approach, I think it would be very nice, and just open that up and I can see just very, very clearly what I've entered and what I need to enter without having to open up several pages to do that.
Well, one of the things we don't want to ever lose is the little gold nuggets of information that might somehow get buried, somehow get lost. If you have 500, for some reason we have 500, ended up 500 farmers that complete, one farm, one gold nugget of information could somehow get lost in all that. We want to make sure that we don't lose that. We capture that information is visible to people to look at.
One thing I'm asking the participants to do is to take that tag off the seed tag. A lot of times last year the fields were planted, the tags were destroyed, and just having that little tag that goes on the seed tag lets you know the seeds per pound and some of the other information. It can make it a lot easier to gather this information. So that's one thing I'm asking. Take that tag off that, at least one of them.
That's very important, right? Because we have information that we request in our data sheets a little bit about the variety, the seed treatment, some things like that. So it's a good idea, suggestion, Gary, to keep those seed tags, because when some of that information will be needed, in the database. So this is how we're kind of we have some timelines in mind in terms of how this is going to work. It's almost April 1st, so farming's just around the corner. Jim, want to go through some of the timelines that we kind of have set up here?
Yeah, well, these are suggestions, and because I think if you have some targets to shoot for here, it helps to keep us on track. We'd certainly like to see people get actively involved now in getting their teams together and signed up. So a good date to look at there is the 15th of April. If you have somebody come on board a little later than that, we're certainly not going to rule them out. But if you don't have a target like this, you might let this go until you get so busy with corn planting it doesn't happen. So we encourage you to get some of your teams together and signed up soon. Planting, again, that varies with the state and with the weather, but most of your planting is done in the month of May. So if you can get those planting sheets back into us by the end of May, that would be wonderful. Same thing here again with early season, and we just set some arbitrary dates that I think work pretty well for most people. And most of our harvest is done in October. Again, you could have some weather issues hold you longer than that. We won't rule that out. But we can turn around the data and make it much more available to you if we keep these kind of timelines.
That's correct. I mean, just trying to keep people kind of on track a little bit, so things don't become overwhelming. And once you start delaying, then the things you're supposed to do in May, when it gets out to June or July, you're not going to do them. So it's really important to kind of be a little bit timely on this and pay attention to things in the moment. And our goal is to, to notify people, to send out some email blasts to the sponsors and team captains, just to remind them of the things that are going to be going on in the yield challenge in the next few weeks, just to kind of jiggle their memory and get them to think about that a little bit, that these are the things to pay attention to. So these worksheets, as I said, they will be available on the website here, and I would hope in about 2 weeks. We're going through a little bit of a review process on them as I speak. How this will kind of play out here a little bit in 2011 is, these sheets will come back. Team captains or sponsors are going to the internet and download these sheets, electronic sheets, and hopefully the easiest way is just to email them back after they complete them, but they could be faxed back or mailed as well. NSRL at the University of Illinois is going to input it into the database. We have some other data coming in, plant and soil data, soybean cyst nematode data, oil and protein composition data. This will all come back into the database as well, and we're going to build a structure so we can get printable reports for individual farmers, so captains can print those out and distribute them. There'll be some analysis going on later this fall, early winter, about how that data comes together, and there'll be some sorting and ranking of winners that will go on. And just like last winter, of course, there'll be some communications activities, both in the print media, some conferences and meetings, to start to disseminate that information. Does that kind of give a good snapshot, Jim, of what happened a year ago?
Yes, and especially I'd like to point out that last thing on communications. I don't know just everybody that signed up today, whether you're an agronomist or whether you're more involved with marketing, but we have some great opportunity here to spread messages out about what you're doing, about things locally. Gary, I know, wrote up some articles that went into local papers about the people that were engaged in teams in his area, and we will also help you out with things that we can do here at the Illinois Soybean Association. We've facilitated radio interviews, articles that went into papers and publications. We use our own Soybean Review magazine, which goes to about 30,000 different soybean producers. There's a lot of things that we can do to help spread a message of what your team's doing, what your company's doing, and helps to inform Illinois soybean farmers as well.
Okay. Just going to move forward here. We're looking at how the yield challenge, how this pricing structure will be. We've just been thinking through this a little bit, that the pricing structure to enroll in the yield challenge, it was about $1,200 per team per district. And last year for a sponsor, some sponsors paid for 9 districts, and then they got a little bit of a discount, and it was about $10,000 if they enrolled in all 9 districts with one team. We're rethinking this a little bit this year. Still, if the first team is about $1,200 per district, each additional teams in a district, we get about a $200 discount per team. So if there's a second team would be $1,000, a third team would be about $800, and a fourth team would be about $600, and that's where it'd be the sort of the bottom out for the cost per team. So that's a little bit on the pricing structure. Again, most people are going to have 1 or maybe 2 teams per district. If they're in multiple districts out of the 9, maybe they're working in 3 districts, it will have a very similar structure as above. The first team $1,200, and additional teams would have a $200 discount per district. And if somebody's in all districts, a corporate sponsor, a larger company that works in all 9 districts, again, they would pay $10,000 for the first team per district. Then we'd start applying that $200 discount for additional teams. Still applies. So we hope that there are some instances where some sponsors wanted to do more in a few districts rather than cover the whole state, and we try to account for that and not have quite a large fee. And this year we are allowing individual entries. People that want to enter, not part of a team, there's nothing wrong with that. Just a minimal fee of about $125 for individual entries. Of course, individual entries, they don't qualify for the award. We're going to talk about awards in a bit, but individual entries, they're allowed. We welcome them. Farmers that want to do things on their own but are not part of a team, they can participate, but they just won't qualify for an award. Is that about correct, Jim?
I think we've pretty well covered it. If there's other questions, I hope they can text it in to you, and we'll try to deal with those questions later on if we need to.
And this information will be on the website, more of the updated information next week, and we'll have some contact information here at the end as well for if the listeners need further clarification. Let's talk about award structure, Jim, how that worked out last year, how that's structured.
Okay, well, we did awards not on the statewide basis, but on the individual districts that I had mentioned. And our first place winner in each district got a $500 cash award to each participant on the team. So if you had 10 members on your team, that could be a $5,000 award. In fact, actually, we even paid some awards to captains that helped put those together. So there was a substantial amount of money paid out last year, even though we had a couple of districts that didn't even finish out. Second place in the same kind of protocol, if everybody on that team got a $250 award. And we also have awards for schools and for colleges, and those go to the ag departments of those schools, and anything they want to do under that umbrella of the FFA or of the college ag department is quite fine with us. We've had some, maybe 2 or 3 students kind of took a project and ran with it, or we've had entire classes run, or entire FFA chapter would run with the program. And we also had some special awards last year we gave out for some things that we kind of wanted to promote, some different types of thinking and behavior. One of them was how we could economically use this thing in local businesses to develop some strength for that business, and we gave some awards for that. Data completion is very important to us. We probably have some other incentives we may be throwing in here along the way, but data completion award is one that we gave out, and everybody on that team got a $100 cash award. Novel practices, and I'm looking forward to some more unique ideas there, and also innovations in electronic data. We did not have anybody that actually qualified for that last award, but we left it in there because we like to entice people.
Okay. Hey Gary, on the awards last year, were the awards, are they important? These financial awards, are they important?
Yes, they are. I think, of course, the information gained is the most important, but the financial awards were important as well. The teams I worked with, we tried to get them together, and that was more around December or January, and have an awards banquet with the members and possibly their wives as well, or husbands, and take pictures, and that's how we got some of that in the local papers. That I think that recognition and getting together and kind of putting a little bow on it after you finish the year with having the, giving out the cash awards as well as the recognition, I think was paid dividends.
Okay, and thanks, Gary. We have a couple other kind of giveaways. Of course, we have some data on the soil analysis last year for the 2 plots. This year we're adding plant tissue tests. There was some requests from some of the captains last year that would be interesting to see what the plant analysis is doing. I know there's a lot of interest in foliar feeding plants today. Of course, SCN is the #1 threat to soybeans in general in the U.S., so we're going to do an egg count, and if the egg count's at a certain level, we'll do the HG type. And then the whole thing about oil and protein percentages and composition. But we're also going to make sure every team member gets a little report from his farm that's something sort of dressed up and nice. So what information he inputted and what was his results, and we want to make a nice report that can be emailed to him as well. We're going to give the captains a little soil thermometer for some of the efforts they're putting in, and we'd like to get a little soil temperature information at planting, so we're going to give the captains a thermometer. Then the team member participants themselves all the team members that participate in this and work at this, we're going to give them a $25 Cabela gift card, because not all team members will win an award. But we want to make sure everybody, gets a little bit of an award for participating. It does take some work and time. Just to kind of bring this up, how to be successful. Gary, you were in this last year. Some advice on how to be successful.
Just as a team sponsor or a captain, just have a lot of organization. Make sure you know who's doing what, and have someone responsible for each of the aspects, part of it, especially the data entry. Know who's going to be responsible for what parts of it. And I think if we do that, I think we'll get our completion rate much higher.
And Jim, you have one season under your belt now as well, and you saw all the ups and downs of this process. So what do you add to that to make sure people put a little effort into this? They start out. We don't want to have a very high dropout rate. I mean, some things are nature, and we can't prevent that, but we want to just make sure that if we start this, that we help people get to the finish line.
Yeah, Gary did a great job. Excuse me, I sound a little hoarse right now. Gary did a very good job of telling you some of the key things, and that is planning early and making sure you have somebody that's responsible for this all to come together for the team. Gary, I know, filled in with a number of captains last year as we kind of got people coached and onto the right track. I'd be glad to work with anybody who has questions on that, but having somebody that's actually going to pull this data together is very important. You guys who are agronomists and account managers and so on, you're going to be running pretty busy during all the season, so make sure you have a plan on how you're going to do that. Often it's been through somebody at the retail level that just had the vision for this. Often it's been somebody where they came in for summer help, maybe. It might be an intern or someone who had this assigned and really wants to impress what they can do, and it's a great assignment for them. So we need somebody assigned to that information, and we'll try to work with you as well in any way we can to help you out.
And we recognize that many of the sponsors and obviously the captains have other day jobs they have to pay attention to, so finding the time to pay attention to this, even finding 10% of their time to pay attention to this, is somewhat difficult, because they still have their regular job to accomplish. So assigning some intern, some other person to herd this along and making sure the information will be collected, that would be very helpful. Okay, we're just about coming to the end here. What are some of the things that people learned last year, Jim?
Well, it's what the whole purpose was, for us to learn something and share it. So we had a review at the end of the year, and Vince Davis was the one who ran some of these surveys, and he asked, first of all, was what you did in your yield challenge profitable? And we did not expect everybody was going to be profitable. In fact, that's not one of the criteria, because we want to learn about that soybean plant. For those of you who have listened to Kip Kohler's talk, you'll ask him what it cost him to do that, and he'll say it's not relevant. It's not relevant because what he wants to do is learn. He's not just trying to find out what's going to economically work for him. But surprisingly, over half of the people, about 55%, said that what they did was profitable, and that's because a lot of what you guys are doing is things that you'd like to engage your customers in anyway. You have to make sure it's going to be profitable for them. So the next question was, will you use any of these higher yield practices on your acres next year? And I believe the number was about 69% that said yes, they're going to engage at least some of what they did into their acres next year. So we see that's going to be spread across more acres. And then finally, did you just plain learn something? And 92% of the people said yes, they did learn something from the process. So we felt from those numbers that this is a very valuable program, and one that people saw a great value in as they move ahead.
All right, good. Thanks, Jim. Of course, just to kind of bring this to a close, of course, some high points here when we want yield challenge to be a success. Some lessons were learned from 2010. Some improvements are made. It's still a pretty simple protocol. As some of these points said, we're working really hard to find more sponsors and to to capitalize on the momentum the yield challenge picked up in 2010, and try to generate more information that can be useful to Illinois soybean farmers. One of the things in the database, we want to make sure that the things we're learning from the yield challenge, all the big picture stuff and all those little nuggets of valuable information, that we can share that through communications efforts, through the companies that are participating have a way to get that information and share it with their customers as well. So we want this to be a very impactful program that can really improve soybean yields in Illinois. Gary, any kind of last-minute points you wanna make or tips?
Yes, I think that the one thing farmers commented to me is that they learned that if you put a little more management in the soybeans, or put as much management in the soybeans as they do on their corn, that you can kick up the management and you can also kick up your yields and profitability. So I think they've learned that soybeans respond to the higher management, and it pays off for them.
Okay, Jim.
It's hard to follow up on that. That's what our whole purpose is here, is to really focus on soybeans, and we are really seeing some results from that.
Okay. Just the last a few minute things here. With this information, we're going to post this webinar on the Yield Challenge website. It'll probably be up to next week. You can go to the Yield Challenge our website at www.soyyieldchallenge.org and get much of the same information. You have any questions, any issues, any problems, just send an email to yieldchallenge@illsoy.org, and that just goes directly to Jim Nelson, and he will answer those questions. So any other comments, Gary or Jim?
Well, we're real pleased with the momentum that we're seeing. A number of companies, first of all, I don't know of any company that engaged with us last year that says, we're walking out of this thing, or it didn't work for us. Some of them had some difficulties, but most of them, even those that had some difficulty in getting teams complete, are back in this year saying, okay, now we've figured it out, we're going to really try to get more involvement this year. We've had companies double and triple the amount of engagement they're going to have for 2011. I think that speaks very well of the program and how the value is seen by multiple people, farmers and retailers and companies that are engaged in helping you with supplying the needs for soybeans.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for participating today, listening on the webinar. My apologies for any kind of hiccups in sound and echoes and things. This is the first time we've done this, and try to bring everybody together to do a Yield Challenge webinar using this technology. So any issues with that were more my fault and responsibility for not maybe practicing up front. But again, I want to thank you for participating, listening on this today, and just go to the website or send an email for more information, and we'll help you out the best we can. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for everyone that participated.